Hello, today we are going to study ancient Greece. Starting first off with geography in the two main city-states, which are Sparta and Athens. As the unit continues, we will also cover culture, mythology, the Trojan War, the Persian Wars, the Peloponnesian War, and then Alexander the Great and Hellenistic culture. But again, today we are starting with geography and early Greece. Early Greece consisted of three groups called the Minoans, Mycenaeans, and the Dorians. For the geography of Greece. Greece is in Europe, located on the Balkan Peninsula. A peninsula, remember, has water on how many sides? 3. To the south is the Mediterranean Sea, and to the east you have the Aegean Sea. The way that I remember the Aegean Sea is when I write it, capitalize the E after the A, and for some reason that makes me think east. To the west you have the Ionian Sea. And then the Aegean Sea will be what separates Greece from Asia Minor. If you look at the map on the wall, remember that's that gold peninsula that sticks out. It is also very mountainous in ancient Greece, and even today, not just ancient, it's still got mountains. They didn't go away. It's a very mountainous region, and that divided Greece into isolated valleys. Because of this division, there's going to be the rise of independent city-states within the Balkan Peninsula, meaning they're going to have their own governments, their own militaries. They're going to be pretty much completely separate. Also, due to their location and being a peninsula having water on how many sides again? 3! Greeks were good sailors and traders. They're going to sail throughout the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea. Greece was also comprised of numerous islands. People moved to these islands because of the mountainous terrain. With the mountains, it's really hard for farming. Remember, the earliest civilization settled near rivers. These ones are also settled near a body of water. Mountains, not good. Not good for civilization. So the mountains are very difficult for farming, especially with the population. It's pretty big. They're going to also move to these islands because of a lack of space. So they moved to the islands. Why? Lack of space and the need for fertile land to farm. One of these main islands was in Crete. Island of Crete was the home to a group called the Minoans. They were a nomadic tribe, and there's not a whole lot that we know about them. They were there, we do know, 500 years before China's first major civilization, but about 1400 BCE, about 600 years after they came about, they're just gone. It is possible that they were absorbed by the Mycenaean culture when they invaded. Minoans were also known for being great seafarers. Again, they're on an island. The culture of the Minoans will end up being adopted by the Mycenaeans when they invade. And then the civilization of Crete will greatly help the development of Greece and in turn become the dominant culture until the rise of Alexander the Great. At this point in time, I want to try something. It may or may not work. I want you to pause the video and see if you can click on the link for the Minoans. If you cannot, then I would like you to navigate to YouTube or to the slideshow for the plan for the unit, and I would like for you to watch the history teacher's music video on the Minoans and take notes. Thank you. Next, we have the Mycenaeans. They are one of the nomadic groups that traveled through the Balkans. They were an Indo-European group settling on the Greek mainland approximately 2000 BCE. So that is about the same time as the Minoans were on Crete, and about 500 years before they settled at the Huanghe River in China. The name of the Mycenaean civilization comes from their king, King Mycene. They were most known for being very good warriors, and as a result, they will end up dominating the Balkan Peninsula. And then, about 1500 BCE, the Minoans began to have a great influence over them. The Mycenaeans adopt the Minoan way of life in terms of sea trade and culture, and possibly absorbed the Minoans into their own civilization. The Dorians were relatives of the early Greeks. We also know that they were a nomadic tribe settling on the mainland. Historians believe that they came from the Bronze Age and are related to the Bronze Age Greeks. But again, no certainty, just a thought. Unfortunately, we do not know a whole lot about the Dorians because they did not leave behind any written records. Moving on, the polis and two great cities. The two main cities were Sparta and Athens. Greece was a collection of independent city-states. Why? Track back. Because the mountains divided them up into isolated valleys. These independent city-states are throughout the Balkan Peninsula, the Mediterranean Sea, and Asia Minor, or also known as Anatolia. Each city-state is called a polis. Polis is a city-state. Each city-state also had an acropolis. Acropolis is above the city. The Acropolis is usually where the temples would be located dedicated to the polytheistic gods of Greece, most notably Athena and Athens. Since each city-state was also independent of one another, they had a variety of government systems. Most started out as a monarchy with the king as a ruler. Soon, your landowners or your farmers will take over and form an aristocracy. An aristocracy is government by the middle or upper class. Remember, land equals money. Money equals power. Later, there will be an oligarchy. An oligarchy occurs after the middle class decides that they do not like the government and the upper class dominating them. So an oligarchy is by the middle class, and it is ruled by a select few, a small group. I remember oligarchy because G means group. Sparta. Sparta was known as a nation of soldiers. In ancient Sparta, life was devoted completely to war. It did not matter if you were male or female. Women also had to know how to fight because they were in charge of protecting Sparta while the men were away at war. It also helps in self-defense because in Sparta, a man took any woman that he wanted, and if he was successful, she would then become his wife. If she was able to fight for herself and fend him off, then he was not allowed to have her. Spartans also owned slaves. These slaves were known as helots or helots. Helots were usually prisoners of war, as was the case with many slaves in the ancient world. And the life of a helot was not valued. Actually, in being a Spartan warrior, it was one task that you had to kill a helot without being discovered. Rule, how would they know? I don't know, but they knew. Rule in Sparta was very harsh and strict. They had an oligarchy for their government. It's very harsh and strict in Sparta because, again, everything in their daily lives revolved around war. In ancient Sparta, you were not a citizen until you turned 30 years old. You also had to be a man. That means women, children, and any guy 29 or younger had no political rights. So you guys are about halfway there, and I will never get it. When Spartan children were born, they were inspected at birth to determine whether or not they would be fit for the demands of Spartan society. They were left outside overnight, little bitty babies crying just out of their mommy's tummy, and leave them outside. If they survived, then it was believed that they were going to be a strong warrior. Those who did not survive, not a big deal. Their lack of perseverance meant they would only bring down Spartan society in the end. They did not want the weak. So these children who were deemed not worthy would be a disgrace to Spartan society had they lived. When Spartan male children turned 7 years old, they were sent off to military training. Imagine a younger brother of yours, 7 years old, bye-bye. They left their homes and lived in the barracks where they would stay until they turned 30, and then at that point they are able to attain citizenship. But no worry, guys, when you turn 20 years old, you're allowed to get married. But you don't get to live with your wife until you become a citizen at age 30 because you are forced to live in the barracks until you are 30. As stated before, women were also trained in the art of war. Women were responsible for protecting Sparta while the men were at war. This prevented it from becoming a vulnerable city-state. Again, women would also use these fighting techniques to protect themselves against the men who so desired them. Unfortunately, it did not turn out so well for some of those guys. You don't want a lady beating you up. Athens, totally different ballgame here. Athens started out as a monarchy with a king as the head of the city-state. It then moved to become an aristocracy where the nobles or higher class controlled the decisions in the government. Then it moves to a tyranny, which is when one person seizes control. It is very similar to a dictatorship. Then you have a man named Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes arrives and moves Athens into a limited democracy. A limited democracy in Athens was comprised of a legislative or lawmaking body, kind of like our Congress. Then the rule of Athens evolved further into a direct democracy, which required a vote from all citizens of Athens. But remember, women and children are not citizens. Well-known rulers before we get to the direct democracy. Draco. Draco was a tyrant who instituted cruel and harsh policies. One of the most notable of these policies was debt slavery. If you owed a debt, you were put into slavery until the debt was, quote-unquote, paid off. Draco was considered to be so cruel and harsh and unfair that it led to the modern-day term draconian. And those of you who have read Harry Potter, who's the bad little boy in the movie? Or the book? We should start with the book. Draco Malfoy. Then we have Solon. Solon was also a tyrant, but he was a pretty good tyrant. He was actually chosen by the aristocracy to take over after Draco. When he became ruler, he instituted a number of reforms to improve the city-state. The most notable of these was ending debt slavery. Cleisthenes, again, ruler during the limited democracy of Athens. He created a lawmaking body known as the Council of 500. It was made up of how many Athenian citizens? 500. In order for a law to pass or be revoked, the majority had to agree on it. Pericles. Pericles was the leader of Athens when the policy of direct democracy began. Under direct democracy, 6,000 people, really citizens, which means adult males, needed to agree for a law to pass or be revoked. Pericles believed that a leader should be well-versed in the art of public speaking or rhetoric. Education was also a valuable asset for all citizens of the empire, so similar beliefs to Confucius. This allowed for well-informed speeches to be given to the masses of the people before matters were decided. This means that you would not go out there, give a speech, and sound like an idiot. It was used as a persuasive method to sway votes one way or another. Okay, so the rhetoric encouraged all members of society to participate in the government, which was a big expectation under the rule of Pericles with direct democracy. The construction or rebuilding of the Parthenon was instituted by Pericles. Parthenon is a temple dedicated to the goddess Athena. Athena was the goddess who watched over the city of Athens, therefore her temple is in the Acropolis of Athens. He hired a sculptor named Phidias, Phidias, to create a statue of Athena inside the Parthenon. Today it is still standing, but under reconstruction. Golden Age of Athens and Pericles. The rule of Pericles in Athens was known as the Golden Age of Athens or the Golden Age of Pericles. This took place between the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars and served as the basis for Western civilization for hundreds of years to come. Pericles extended democracy so that all citizens were able to participate in the decision-making process of the government. After Athens was destroyed by the Persians, many Athenians lost hope. Then came Pericles. He had it rebuilt, including a grander monument for the goddess Athena, known today as the Parthenon. Check it out. Who created the first Greek legal code and was known for being extremely harsh? 2. At what age were Spartan male children sent for military training? 3. What was above the city and was used for temples of the gods? 4. The Parthenon is dedicated to what goddess? And 5. What did Cleisthenes create? Please describe. Thank you. I will talk to you in a moment.